took of collection of legal studies, the ICE expressed a wish to have a publication in 3 steps. The government agreed with these 2 wishes, and the final report was published in August 2001, November 2001, and in March 2002. The 25 studies, including updated versions of the interim reports, exist only in 1 language, either in German or in French, and are not available online. The synthesis was translated and is available in 4 languages, in book form as well as online. Now the question of correction of wrongdoings and declarations of the government and the parliament. The ICE report contains several critical appreciations of the attitude of the government during and after the war, in particular on the refugee policy and of companies. But it makes no recommendations even for restitutions. At the end of the synthesis, we can read, I quote here, the task of the Commission did not include clarification in individual cases of what belonged to whom, for direct involvement with material restitution of dormant accounts and of cultural and other assets. It was not mandated neither to identify the assets retained in Switzerland nor to convey them to the rightful owners abroad. End of quote. No case of restitutions or compensation by Swiss authorities directly based on the results of the ICE is known to me so far. One explanation might be the legal framework and money. $1.25 billion were provided by a global settlement between 2 Swiss banks and Jewish organizations in 1998-1999. Crucial to that settlement, account holders, but also refugees, victims of slave laborers, and former owners of looted assets were entitled to claim for restitution or compensation. The results of the investigation of the ICEP, so the Foreign Committee in Swiss banks, were used in that context. So all in all, the government made 5 official declarations on the findings of the ICE. The most important one in March 2002, after the publication of the 3rd and last part of the final report. The government had also to respond in written form to dozens of parliamentary information questions or requests for action. For example, to distribute the report in all classrooms of the country, or to make new studies, or to erect a monument and so forth and so on. As for the Parliament itself, which had established the ICE, it has not organized in plenum any discussion or ceremony with representatives of the ICE. And here, as far as I've heard, it's one of distinction or differences with our Romanian colleagues. Let us now look briefly at other state-commissioned historical studies in Switzerland, or attempts thereof. They can be arranged in 3 categories. Other studies on the role of Switzerland during the Second World War. Secondly, studies on some aspects of the foreign relations of Switzerland. Last, studies on issues with an almost exclusive national dimension. Second World War. On this issue we have 2 well-known reports, one in the 1950s on the refugee policy and one in the 1960s and 70s on the neutrality policy. In both cases, the starting point was a publication of sensitive documents in foreign collections of diplomatic documents. In both cases, one expert was appointed and the expert was granted privileged access to official documents. In both cases, a strong need for self-justification and for prevention of general criticism can be noticed from the part of the state authorities. And both experts were particularly critical of some aspects of the refugee policy, so decades before the ICE. Now, on the second category of state commissioned historical studies, those related to some aspects of the foreign relations of Switzerland. In the Swiss Parliament, there have been long and disputed debates on the possibility or the need to set up two other expert commissions similar to the IC. The first focused on the activities in Switzerland of the former East German Stasi. The second on the relations between Switzerland and South Africa during the apartheid era. Both eventually did not materialize. However, in the case of South Africa, research was undertaken not in a form of an expert commission, but in many other ways. Concerning South Africa, the need for clarification was considered particularly acute in two fields: economic and financial relations with the former apartheid state on one side, and cooperation in the field of intelligence activities on the other side. Concerning intelligence activities, parliamentary and judicial investigations were undertaken. In the last case, it was carried out by the Office of the Attorney General for the Criminal Prosecution Authority of the Confederation. As for the economic field, historic research was conducted in two stages. Firstly, in 1999, a working group headed by an ambassador and composed of those civil servants who were in charge of those economic and financial relations drew up a report within a few weeks' time. The report was sent to the government and then published in full. It contained for the first time, for example, detailed statistics on gold transactions. However, the study was made exclusively on files that still were within the ministries. And the report made a formal recommendation that historical research be carried out further on by independent historians and on the basis of reports kept at the Swiss Federal Archives. The recommendation supported by the Parliament was adopted. So independent historians means that they were not appointed by the government, as it was the case by the Belgian Commission or by a ministry. It was in the context of the Swiss National Science Foundation, a central instrument for state-funded research in all fields, also medicine and based on the principle of scientific self-governance. The government agreed to support with 2 million Swiss francs several studies on various aspects of the relations between Switzerland and South Africa. Based on that decision, a call for projects was made by the Swiss National Science Foundation. 10 projects proposals were adopted by the foundations, whereas some others were rejected. So the scientific results were to be available as reports provided to the foundation. 3 characteristics here of the publication of results within the framework of the Swiss National Science Foundation should be pointed out, having here in mind the Belgian Commission. Firstly, it is up to the authors, so the persons in charge of the project, to decide to publish the report, or a part of the report, and to find a publisher for that. Therefore, some reports in relations with South Africa are available as books, whereas other ones only exist as unpublished manuscripts. Secondly, since it was a series of 10 projects, the final report had to be delivered by the expert the foundation had appointed to coordinate and lead the series of projects. This final report was published in 2005. Thirdly, as a general rule, the government never comments on findings of the reports made in the framework of the Swiss National Science Foundation. In spite of several strong requests by members of the Parliament, the government constantly declined to make an exception for the report on South Africa. I have elaborated a little bit on historical research carried out in the context of the Swiss National Science Foundation, because we will see in a few minutes that this model was used in several other occasions. Some effort on access to archives. While providing financial support for historical research, so 2 million Swiss francs, in relations with South Africa, the government asked the ministries to grant historians access to the files kept at the Swiss Federal Archives, so files up to the 1990s, as widely as possible within the framework of the local archives. There was one exception, file on intelligence activities, because they were used at the same time for judicial investigations. While historians were still undertaking research, the government decided to close access to some files documenting economic relations with South Africa